Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s niece, Elvita King. And when she stayed in our home, she gave me this to be with us, and it's a reminder. This is a little baby at a number of weeks in the mom's womb. And I want to just ask you to listen very carefully today, because what I want to share with you on this podcast is this real simple. Science, sonograms, and scripture all confirm the unborn are babies, not blobs. Now, there's many people that would say, well, it's just a fetus. But do you know that's the Latin word for life? And when you talk with people that will say that, because unfortunately they've been misled or deceived, do you know that unfortunately you'll hear them then turn and say, oh, when's the baby due? Or they'll say, oh, she's got the baby bump. We know intuitively that's a human being. You know, I can tell you this, that when I was in my mother's womb, I was not healthy at all. And when I was born, if you saw pictures of me, you would say, wow, you look like an Auschwitz patient. Because I really was. I was not receiving calcium, hardly any, when my mother was carrying me in the womb. Today, if a woman goes in and they diagnose there's a problem like that, many times they say, well, let's have an abortion and we'll just try again or something like that. But we need to respect human life. We're dealing not with tissue or just a blob, like dealing with a tonsil or something. And so I want to ask you today, listen carefully. When Barack Obama was running for president the first time, Rick Warren out in California said, when does human life begin? And you may recall, he said, well, that's above my pay grade. He also was asked about same-sex marriage, and he said, I'm opposed to it. Well, David Axelrod, his senior advisor, in his book later admitted, he said, well, that was just a lie. We don't want to listen to lies or be deceived by politicians running for office, saying all these rights, are yours. We have a right to life according to our Constitution. And I want to ask you to listen carefully, because people are at stake. We're dealing with human beings. Celine Dion, one of the most outstanding singers in the world, she was one of 10 children. And allegedly, when her mom was carrying her, there was advice, maybe just get an abortion. But a Catholic priest appealed to mom, and that's where it was reported there was a change, and she was born. Imagine if Celine Dion had lost her life. There's multitudes, 60 million since the Roe v. Wade decision, that have lost their lives. But I want to tell you today, we stand for human life. And you are part of this to awake people and educate people. Now let me tell you, number one, from a scientific standpoint, and I want to be very accurate on this, so listen to this carefully. It says, and this is what do biologists believe? So we're dealing with empirical data, okay? A PhD candidate at the University of Chicago recently invested 5 years. He did a study nationally to determine, when does human life begin? When does fertilization actually begin? Stephen Jacobs gave this groundbreaking study, and it revealed the overwhelming majority concurred human life begins at conception. Now listen, 90% of those biologists who say they were pro-life, they said life begins at conception. But 75% of those that were pro-choice, they said the same thing. Now, Mr. Jacobs had pushback, and they were trying to undermine his dissertation, and, they came against him. But he persevered. He revealed, the results of the study. He gained his PhD, and he is a man that is an individual that can inspire us to be people of conviction. So, biologists, they're concurring today. How about sonograms? Now, in 1965, Life magazine, they put forth pictures from a man named Nilsson. And that was, 1965? And it was just a landmark study in Life magazine. You saw the little baby development and moving in the mom's, womb. And today, we have such advanced technology that when you see a sonogram, you say, wow, look at this little baby moving, developing. And Planned Parenthood doesn't want people seeing this. That's why they stand against it, because studies show 75% of women that are, in a crisis situation, and then they see the sonogram, they'll say, I want to keep my baby, or have that baby given for, adoption. We adopted a child. My son, one of them, adopted 3 children. So we preserve life. We protect human life. When my oldest son was in the womb, I'll never forget, my wife would be laying on the sofa, and we'd see movement, kicking, and, today he's a very type A, strong, leader. But that was him in the womb, and we would step back and say, this is beautiful. Look at there's a human life. This is our little son. Now today, sonograms make it crystal clear. And so it's not only science, but it's sonograms. And then lastly, what does the scripture teach? This is the best-selling book of all time, has changed the lives of millions all over the world every single year. Sonograms, science, but what does scripture say? Well, in Luke chapter 1, it says that, listen to this, and I'm going to quote, when Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, what? The baby leapt in her womb. It doesn't say the blob, the tissue, the jellyfish. The baby leapt in the womb. Psalm 139 says clearly, listen, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. God is the author of life, and we're called to preserve life. And you know, if you read in the Proverbs, there's a warning. It says there's 6 things God hates. 7 are an abomination. What is one? It says God hates those that shed innocent blood. Thou shalt not kill. Homicide. This is wrong. We've got to come to our senses, and we need to awaken people in this hour to the sanctity of human life. One of our great presidents, Ronald Reagan, he wrote a book. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was called this, Abortion and the Conscience of a Nation. And in there, he categorically appealed and made the statement that the Constitution never intended to grant some kind of a so-called right to take the life of a baby in the womb. Now, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but Roe v. Wade was the decision in 1973 that legalized abortion on demand. Do you know that Norma McCorvey, the woman that was in there, she was Roe, she said this before she died. She said, I am dedicated to spending the rest of my life undoing the law that bears my name. That's Norma McCorvey of Roe v. Wade. Let me say it again. She said, I am dedicated to spending the rest of my life undoing the law that bears my name. Science, sonograms, scripture, all affirm, confirm that the unborn is life, a human being, not just a blob. And Jesus said this, when judgment comes, he said, he'll separate the sheep from the goats. And he said, what you did to these, the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me. I make this appeal today. Listen, post this, share this information. You can go on Charisma News and you can literally see, and other news services where I write, and you can see the groundbreaking study where these biologists are acknowledging what I think all of us, we know. If you've ever been to some of the feminist rallies where people can huddle, they'll have placards and they'll say, parasites have no rights. We're not dealing with a parasite. We're dealing with a human being, a developing baby in the womb. All the DNA is present. And it's our challenge in this day to speak up in love and also to help people through crisis pregnancy centers with our finances and also through adoption, any way we can, so that life is preserved and we protect that little baby in the womb. Will you join me in this? God is with us when we take this stand.